while there's no justification for it, hurt people hurt people. Of all the people I've met through my life that have struggled and had struggles, particularly mental ones, they've all had a story that's been untold because it's never been validated by the people that had victimised them. That I've been gaslit or told you've got a great imagination. So there's pain that's been trapped and unresolved. The year is 1969. I'm just 5 years old. I'm on the Anapai track in Abel Tasman National Park. And in my hand, I've got a spear that I fashioned in my father's workshop with a manuka stick for the handle and a piece of plywood in the shape of a triangle that I fashioned onto the stick with some nails and some twine. The wild cattle are in the distance and I can hear the rumble. I can now start to feel the ground shake. With the absolute braveness of a warrior, I'm going to stand my ground as they bear down upon me. I had an unhealthy fear of my father, but I wanted to prove to him that I was a warrior and strong just like him at 5 years of age. And maybe if I could kill the bull, I'd win his love as a son who wanted nothing more than that. The ground started to shake and I could hear men's laughter in the distance. One of them was my father. One of the beasts had turned around, had a crack at him, and he'd run up a tree on the bank and swung from it and laughed. He was a brave man. My father was a strong man. There's an old newspaper clipping, or a magazine clipping at least, of him standing there, Mr. Tahuna Nui, strong and young when he was 18. Now he'd be about 23, 24, still in his prime, and he was rounding up cattle with the drover, wild cattle in the national park. And my mother had told me they're going to fetch the wild cattle, but I was going to save the day and I was going to kill the bull, the one that was causing the trouble. So there I was on that track to Anapai, standing my ground with my spear. And even with a child's logic of a 5-year-old brain, I figured if I stuck the handle of that spear and buried it hard into the track and held up my end of the spear with a sharp pointy end, the bull would run into it, and if I held it hard and firm, he'd impale himself on it and I'd get out of the way. This seemed like a fantastic idea to me. I thought nothing can go wrong, I've got this. The ground shaking now like an earthquake and a rumble as they come around the corner. First is the bull in front, massive. I didn't expect him to be so large. The other cattle behind him, and he's bearing down right upon me. Only 30 metres away, coming full charge, and here I am, holding my spear, burying it in the ground, waiting for the moment of impact. 20 metres, 15 metres, and suddenly reality hit me. And at the final moment, I jumped off the track and watched my little spear break into 1,000 pieces. He didn't go near it. His hooves broke it. And there I was on the side of the track trembling. And reality set in that I was just a very small boy, and that was a dangerous raging bull, and I probably would have died if I'd stayed there. Dad was a ranger at Abel Tasman National Park in Tōtaranui. And my mother, she was a ranger's wife. And she taught correspondence to my younger brother Tristan and my older sister Trudy. There were no children to play with except in the holidays when people came camping. For the rest of the year, it was solitaire. My father had built a boat that was a speedboat. He'd made it in the lounge and I watched with anticipation as he built the boat, thinking this is going to be amazing. But the reality was, when it was finished and on the water, I was terrified of it when I got in. As a 5-year-old going 30 knots per hour, it was terrifying for me, but I wanted to please my dad, so I did it. He put earmuffs on eventually when I told him I had ringing ears after riding it, and I used to get sick from the fumes, but also it was the feeling of anticipation and anxiety that really made my tummy churn as a wee boy. But I went out in that boat all the time, and eventually I grew to actually enjoy it. And I learnt from a very, very young age that doing dangerous things would win my dad's appreciation, would win my dad's love, and he would accept me if I did dangerous things. And it was dangerous in this little boat, because it went faster than the park sport boat. That boat, it meant to me, maybe, if I can go fast enough, that Dad will think I'm the coolest son there ever was on the planet. But I got told off because I did stupid things in it. The other boats with their outboard motors used to go up the beach. That's how they would park their boats. They would race full speed towards the beach, and at the last minute they'd lift their outboards up, and I thought I would do the same thing, but I had an inboard. And at full speed I went to the beach, and my father was screaming at me, "No, son, no, no," but I couldn't hear because the motor was right in front of me and I had earmuffs on. I hit the beach, the nose went straight in, there was no outboard to lift up. I buried the prop. I didn't slide up the beach like I was supposed to, and all the sea came over the top, flooding the boat, and I sat there swamped on the beach, stuck, and I got told off. One day my brother Tristan and I were playing on the beach, and I picked up a Japanese shoe. The Japanese squid boats would be out on the horizon. We'd see them just out on the limit, their lights at night, and they would throw rubbish over the side sometimes. I picked the shoe up and played with it like kids do with stuff. And little be known to me, that shoe had a disease, a streptococcal infection grew on my face, and on one side I ended up with a cyst, and nobody knew what it was. They took me to hospital in Nelson, a big drive in those days, Totaranui, Wainui, Takaka, and then all the way to Nelson Hospital. They said, "We're going to have to keep your son in for a while in hospital." And look at him, I was 5 years of age. I didn't want to say goodbye to my mother. I didn't want to say goodbye to my father, my brother and my sister. That was my family. And they had to go back to Totaranui. I cried, clinging to my mum, but she left me there, saying, "I'll be back soon, son." But she didn't come back. A whole week went by and she didn't come back. And I thought I was going to die because I didn't have my mum with me as a 5-year-old kid. Another week passed, and a staff nurse started looking after me, Staff Nurse Elizabeth. I started to do this thing where I'd make myself go invisible to myself. I'd go numb, and I can remember walking up the corridor of the hospital, having to go to the toilet, and thinking, I'm not here anymore now. If I'm not here, nothing bad can happen to me. I made myself numb so I didn't feel stuff, and I became numb, and I stopped talking to people. My mum hadn't come back, and I was missing her crazy. One day I went to the toilet in my pants. I peed myself just to see what happened. I quickly got a swift slap on the ear from one of the nurses and told off and thrown into a shower, and I was scrubbed quite vigorously all over. I found out that I was actually not numb all the time if I felt pain. And the nurse that scrubbed me so hard, she was not my friend. She was another nurse that disliked me for some reason. Maybe I reminded her of somebody or something, but she was quite sadistic and quite nasty. Staff Nurse Elizabeth, on the other hand, she was lovely. She had a Morris Minor, and on the weekend she took me pea picking, and she tried to cheer me up. One day my mother's friend Barbara came in, Barbara Bailey. She was a lovely lady. And she said, "Mum's going to be here soon." I was so glad to see somebody that knew my mum. Finally, after 3.5 weeks, Mum came. And God, it was good to see her. And I hugged her and I said, "Don't ever leave me, Mum." And she said, "I have to. They've got to do an operation on you." I can remember clinging to her as she left and the tears rolling down my face and the tears rolling down her face. But in those days, they thought it was better for the mother to be away from the child and not see them too much because it would upset the child. But that was the wrong thing you could ever do. And soon, I developed as a child a really deep-seated feeling of being abandoned. And I became hard on the outside and numb on the inside to survive. 2 months went by and I was in that hospital. And then they sent me to Burwood after a failed operation in Christchurch. I went to Christchurch and there, in hospital, they did plastic surgery on my face. The second one, and they removed it, and that's when they did the biopsy and found that it was something from Japan that we don't have in New Zealand. The scar on the face was nothing compared to the scar inside my soul, my heart. My emotions have been left by my mother. And when I grew up, I always wanted to be loved and never left by a woman. And when the first girl broke my heart and left me, I had that abandonment feeling all over again. So then I thought, what if I have multiple girlfriends? If one leaves me, I've got the other one as a backup. And I did that, and that failed even more. That just hurt people, because hurt people hurt people. The numbness was still inside of me. I just kept numb. I kept numb as a way to survive. And I kept hard on the outside. And I did dangerous things, because maybe my father would accept me. I was always dangerous, putting my life in physical threatened situations, hanging out with bad men, hanging out with gangs. I found myself in Thailand at the age of 27 before I went to Europe, working for the mafia, working for bad men. I was somehow attracted to bad men. I met a really bad guy who'd done really bad things, and we started gambling together. My job was I was doing shiatsu massage for the kickboxers, preparing them for fights, but these weren't the kickboxing fights you saw for the tourists. These were underground. Some of them where people got limbs broken and even often life-changing injuries and sometimes even death. But there was huge stakes, huge money on it. And these young 15-year-old boys would be trained up. But I liked this dangerous place. And my dangerous friend that I met, his name was Nam. I think it means water, but I'm not sure. And he liked living a dangerous life, and he'd grown up dangerous. Anyway, we gambled. Together we went gambling, and with him, there was always something bad's going to happen, and something bad soon did happen to him. Working for the mafia is never good. He gambled in the game which has got the best stakes for a gambler, in my humble opinion, blackjack. And he lost, and he'd already borrowed money, and he couldn't pay it back, and he came to me and said, "Bro, they're going to kill me if I don't pay this back." I said, "I can't help you, man." The following morning I woke up in Corsange Road, and those of you that have travelled will know Corsange Road very well. I've been staying in a cheap lodging there, with rats running around, sharing my room with a heroin addict. And I went down to the pool table, because Nam had been in the room next to me, and there he was in the morning on the pool table, looking really sick. He had a big scar on his back. I tried to wake him up, but he wouldn't wake up. One of the mafia guys came up to me and says, "Leave him alone." I said, "What's happened to him? What have they done to him?" They said they've taken his kidney as a payment. He didn't pay his debt. I stayed there for a while working with those guys doing the massage work, which I'd learnt when I was in New Zealand, making very, very average money, but mixing with dangerous people, watching these fights underground. Eventually Nam, who was now very sick with one kidney, started to surface, and soon he was back into the world again. By the time I'd left, he was looking well. I'd gone to Germany to find my way, to seek my fortune. I'd started off in Sweden, living with my mate Arb, and then moved down to Germany where I'd met Stu and played a year. I wanted to come home, and on the way I stopped off in Bangkok, and I went down Khorsand Road, back to the same old place, and sure enough, Nam was still there. He was looking fine. He was involved in some really, really bad shit. Heroin, and dealing it, selling it overseas. And he got himself into debt again. Now, I'd already left Bangkok, but I heard when I got back to New Zealand from one of my friends over there, another Kiwi, that he woke up one morning on that same pool table and his other kidney had been taken. And he was all stitched up and he died within a short time after that. Hurt people don't just hurt other people, but they also hurt themselves. And breaking that cycle, well, that's something I've done. To fix yourself, you've got to deal with the causation. Some people say a leopard never changes its spots, and there's truth in that too. But the causation is where you've got to get to fix stuff. And to recognise why you are like you are, why you act like you act. And to realise if you struggle with abandonment, that actually, if somebody leaves you, you've got choices. Yeah, you can go numb and be hard on the outside like a 5-year-old might do to survive. But with your adult brain, you can rationale and look after the 5-year-old inside yourself and say, hey, it's going to be okay, mate, we got this, and your arms and legs are not going to drop off if mum doesn't come home. You'll be okay. And if she leaves you, your arms and legs won't drop off, because you survived this and you're still here. And you are a survivor. And the art of survival comes with one ingredient and one thing that you must have. Doesn't matter whether you're doing outdoor survival, doesn't matter if you've got a disease process you're trying to fight, doesn't matter if you've got a broken heart, doesn't matter if you're financially stuffed. Every person that survives in this life shares one thing in common, and that is the will to live. That human spirit, the will to live. In a real true survival situation, that's your best tool. It will win every time. That's my story. That's my story. We've all got a story. We've all got a mountain to climb. And these things make us who we are. They make us strong, they make us resilient, and they make us appreciate being alive. I hope you've enjoyed my story. Go steady, and if you know a brother who's struggling with something, share the story. It might just help him out.